In a shocking incident this past Wednesday, there was a double shooting inside of Ottawa. First, one at a Canadian Forces memorial for fallen soldiers, and then second inside the centre block inside of Parliament. A gunman killed at least one Canadian Armed Forces soldier before being killed himself by security forces and police inside the building. This incident does come on the heels of an incident on Monday in which a suspect ran over two Canadian Armed Forces soldiers, killing them. Witnesses say at least 30 to 50 shots were fired inside the building. In the end, it was Kevin Vickers, the Sergeant-at-Arms for Parliament, who ended up killing the suspect. He was known for having a particular fetish for correct aim and has received numerous awards from the Canadian government already, and is a 19 or 20-year veteran of the RCMP. Witnesses say he shot the man dead inside the Hall of Honor. The Canadian Armed Forces soldier that was killed when a gunman was attacked at the War Memorial not far from Parliament. The slain soldier's name is Corporal Nathan Cirillo, 24, a reservist from Hamilton, Ontario. Cirillo was standing at guard at the memorial when the gunman opened fire. Thus far, no motivations have been determined from the suspect, but he is reportedly a man of Islamic faith. And according to many media reports, the Twitter account for ISIS takes responsibility for the actions and claim that they were the ones who actually orchestrated and carried this action out. Federal sources have identified the suspected shooter as Michael Zehaf-Bibeau, a man in his early 30s who was known to Canadian authorities. Sources tell the Globe and Mail that he was recently designated a high-risk traveler by the Canadian government and that his passport had been seized. The same circumstances surrounding the case of Martin Rouleau-Couture, the Quebecer who was shot Monday after running down two Canadian Armed Forces soldiers with his car. According to sources, he was born in 1982, and CBC News has learned that Zehaf-Bibeau has a criminal record in Quebec going back 10 years on some drug-related charges. Court documents from that time show that he lived at an address in Montreal. During the incident, and of course for some time afterwards, basically the city of Ottawa went onto a major lockdown, including many businesses, government and buildings that were put on a lockdown where people weren't allowed to leave. Obviously, this is a rational security precaution being taken at a time like this. The intended target is believed to have been the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, who did manage to escape out the back door and was never in any real danger. The gunman didn't make it very far into the building. As I said, the surrounding area was placed in lockdown, including the University of Ottawa. But by about the afternoon, students and some teachers were ignoring the lockdown and just leaving anyway. Police did advise that everybody stay home, stay away from the windows, because they didn't know what was going to happen, and at the time we didn't know if this was part of a larger coordinated effort. There have been several world leaders who have given statements of sympathy towards the Canadian people during this time. The United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, through a spokesperson, said the Secretary General is aware of the situation unfolding in Ottawa, including in the Canadian Parliament, during which a soldier has reportedly been shot. He hopes that the situation will be brought quickly under control by Canadian law enforcement authorities. His thoughts are with the people and the Government of Canada at this difficult time. British Prime Minister David Cameron said, "I'm appalled by today's attack in Ottawa. I offer my full support to Prime Minister Harper and the Canadian people as they deal with this incident." General Chuck Jacoby, a commander with NORAD, said, "My heart goes out to the Canadian comrades on this tragic day following the shooting in Ottawa, as well as the hit-and-run attack in Quebec earlier this week, both of which targeted Canadian Forces personnel. We offer our sincerest condolences to the people of Canada. We share their grief, but also their determination not to be intimidated by these cowardly acts." A message of solidarity and condolences also came from U.S. President Barack Obama.
I had a chance to travel to the Parliament in Ottawa. I'm very familiar with that area, and am reminded of how warmly I was received and how wonderful the people there were. And so obviously we're all shaken by it, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we're standing side by side with Canada during this difficult time.
Never shy from causing controversy or being terrible opportunist, a Sun media journalist by the name Michael Coren decided that he was going to take this opportunity, this what is perceived as a tragedy by the Canadian public, as a moment to plug his book, as everybody was flocking to social media to find out exactly what was going on with this shooting. In a tweet that has since been deleted, Coren said that he knew there would be more attacks, linked to an Amazon page for his book, Hatred, Islam's War on Christianity. Coren later claimed that the link to Amazon was automatically attached to his tweet and apologized. Now, on the actual day of the incident, I myself was inside the Spokane courthouse in Hamilton, Ontario. When I was there were about 15 extra police officers providing extra security for the facility because, again, at the time, we weren't aware of exactly what was going on or how widespread this attack actually was, which many people do believe was a terrorist attack, and at this point, it does seem like that's what it was. In addition to this, they also had a two-door system inside the courthouse where you would have to pass through one door, they would close it, and then open another one before you could get through, because that's what my friend and I went through when we were inside the courthouse at that time. Now, a lot of people are looking in the direction of ISIS, and why not? ISIS is already claimed to be taking credit for the two attacks. The guy that was killed appears to be a man of Islamic faith. And the fact that this comes from a very homegrown type situation, and the fact that ISIS has a policy of, not coordinating these attacks too much. Like they call for spontaneous actions by individual actors in this situation to just step forward and carry out their own attacks. I mean, frankly, this is a really genius idea. Because if they're all spontaneous and not planned by some kind of higher force or some kind of military hierarchy, there's no communication from one force to another. And if there's no communication from one force to another, there's nothing to spy on. The NSA, the CIA, CSIS can't spy on their communications if those communications literally don't exist. I mean, this is a tremendously intelligent tactic by ISIS, and it's just brilliant. The organization itself astounds me with its tremendous capacity to do so well. I mean, ISIS came out of seemingly nowhere to become a tremendous, major, powerful force inside of the Middle East, and no one can really has been able to do very much against them. They're just so extremely well coordinated for what is essentially not much more than a guerrilla force. They've managed to take a lot of area very quickly, and they've had some setbacks, but essentially, on the whole, they've done actually very well. It's very strange how well organized they are. I've seen a couple of their videos that they use to recruit people, or essentially their propaganda works, and I gotta say, they're actually very well done. I'm actually impressed by the content they've actually been able to put out. It has high production values, it goes straight to the point, and it's actually very convincing. And, well, that's exactly what propaganda is supposed to do. And I also think that it's very appropriate that so many white Christian kids from the first world end up joining ISIS. I mean, there's, particularly from Australia, there's the one white rapperish looking guy who went over. Then there's the two famous young white blondes who went over, converted to Islam, and went over there to essentially just be, well, frankly, sex slaves for ISIS fighters, who they now want to come back to Australia, having gotten pregnant and feeling that they've made the biggest mistake of their lives, which they certainly have. But there's a lot even non-whites, just regular Muslims, leaving the comfort of the first world to go to ISIS and fight for them. I mean, they're saying something, they're holding something that's very, very strong to them, and it's drawing them into a conflict. Something must mean enough to them that they're willing to leave the comfort of the first world and go there and stand by this. I mean, that's very, I mean, on the surface it seems almost impossible, but these guys, their recruitment drive is so effective. They're able to take people from a comfortable, pampered first world position and convince them to go work in the dingy, horrible hellhole that is the war in the third world. And for their ability to pull off all of this, I'm absolutely impressed. Now, one strange thing I noticed when I was in the car coming home from the courthouse, listening to 680 News, they said that the police chief said, I wasn't sure if it was Ottawa or Toronto, said that at the suspect, the person who did the shooting, it didn't say anything. Like, there was no declaration before he opened fire. He said he made no religious or anti-capitalist statements. And that struck me very odd right away. What do you mean anti-capitalist? This guy, very clearly we see he is Muslim, or at least appears to be Muslim. But of all the things that we expect terrorists to come from, why all of a sudden anti-capitalists? I mean, we are going on about this whole ISIS thing. The war in Afghanistan is essentially failing. But they took this time to bring up anti-capitalists. Well, why is that? I mean, when's the last time there's been any kind of, anti-capitalist terrorist attack in Canada? In fact, when's the last time we even had any terrorist attack? Not since the FLQ, or at least in my opinion. But I think I do have a better understanding of what it is that the guy is actually saying. If we look at everything that's going on in Canada right now, the resistance to the drive, the plans that the Harper government has for Canada, many of the people opposed to that, and they're very largely growing even larger, the number of people that oppose us, they're starting to become very anti-big business. In fact, many of them are starting to become anti-capital as well. When we look at the Idle No More movements, the battles over land, particularly in Alberta, are accelerating, and many of them are taking on a greater anti-property, anti-big business, anti-capitalist kind of stance. Even if not explicitly, there is still a kind of flavor to it. And I think that's coming out. It's not just, with the Idle No More, but a lot of the resistance to everything that's been going on has been targeted largely towards big business. Because after all, big business has been the one big drive for a lot of the stuff that Stephen Harper has been pushing through. And of course, we shouldn't just completely blame Stephen Harper for all of this. We should be blaming capital for all of this. I mean, the Prime Minister doesn't just do things because he wants to. He does things for somebody. That he's doing it for a particular set of interests. And in capitalism, we know that to be the capitalist class. They are the ones that hold the social power in society by holding money, physical or even digital representations of social wealth. One thing that I'm particularly worried about here is some kind of, what I feel is going to be coming up is our own version of the Patriot Act. I think, given the character of Canadians, this might actually be enough to get us to sign over our freedoms into some kind of security measure that's going to take fundamental freedoms away. I mean, after all, Stephen Harper has already done that. He has tried to put through, and has successfully put through, many things that have taken away fundamental rights of Canadians. And this would be that perfect, almost conspiratorial moment when you could push that kind of thing through. I'm a little bit skeptical of it working. I mean, I generally think it will, but a bit skeptical because we are talking only about 3 people having died. But then again, Canada was paralyzed with fear when the FLQ killed just 1 guy way back in the day. So I'm not entirely certain, but I'm pretty sure that it would be successful if Stephen Harper tried to push through some kind of fascist security measures. And I think that every Canadian who doesn't want that kind of thing to happen should really start paying attention in case such a move is attempted. I think another really good point to bring up is that I could just see Stephen Harper on the phone with Obama right now, talking about accelerating Canada's role in a lot of these occupations that are being carried out: Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places. I think this might be the catalyst necessary to get the Canadian population on the side of the wars again, or at least enough of them on the side that there isn't any really serious opposition to the wars. I mean, right now we're stuck in the bloody quagmire that is the Afghan war, a war that we are losing and we're frankly not going to win. 77% of the population doesn't agree with the war in Afghanistan for various reasons. Either way, 77% want it to end. Now, this is a very large number, and one that certainly does demonstrate the undemocratic reality of the Harper government, which again should not be limited merely to Stephen Harper, but a government of capital or a bourgeois democracy. I think this may get enough people on the side of the pro-war contingent so that there will be enough to get more people, get more boots on the ground. There'll be enough to at least lessen the support for these things to be able to happen, particularly as it relates to a more fascist type government and taking some freedoms away, but even carrying out more vicious actions on other countries overseas. And I think this might be one of those moments that the Prime Minister might jump on with public opinion on his side. Because remember, all these politicians right now are calling for solidarity. This is the time for us not to be divided. We all have to stand united against this terrible threat, and we have to cooperate. And that's exactly what they mean by cooperate. We're just basically going to do whatever the Prime Minister says. We're going to use this act, whether fear or anger, to follow what it is that the bourgeois want. Bring Parliament together, the various contradictions between the various sections of the ruling class, to carry out the one overall objective that they do want. And I think that's really what this is. I'm not saying this is a conspiracy. I'm saying this is one of those opportunities in which the ruling class takes advantage of public opinion in order to push that through. Because nobody wants to be known as the person who doesn't love their country. Except for me, I don't mind being known as that guy. But I think now is more of an important time than ever to be divisive. I think we should split now and argue about our differences even more in order to keep that attempted homogeny, to bring us all into one pattern or like one train of thought, which is pro-war. We saw the very same thing happen to the Yanks after 9/11. They all became of a single mindset regardless of where they stood on the political end. Even the libertarians were jumping up and down at the chance to, kill those people for having attacked us. So I think it's right now dissent from the government, dissent between the various, ruling political parties is important now more than ever. Of course, liberals are not immune from trying to take advantage of this situation, as we assume the conservatives are going to do. It has been noted that this crime was committed by a person carrying a long gun. And then a couple of people, particularly Canadian Cynic, went out into the Twitter sphere and say, this was committed with a long gun? If only we had some kind of registry to track them. Because you can track the arms of terrorists? Like, if somebody comes into a country to commit a terrorist act, they're going to legally purchase a gun? Like, this makes absolutely no sense. When someone goes to commit a crime, particularly in Canada, they don't go and use a legal weapon to do so. The vast majority of crimes involving weapons are done with people owning illegal weapons. So what good would a long gun registry even have been? Has there ever been like a weapons registry that's ever caught a terrorist? No. Because that's literally not how it works. Terrorists, criminals, are not going to go purchase a legal firearm to commit a crime. This absolutely reeks of opportunism and is frankly a gigantic non sequitur. I've heard a lot of people say, how did this happen here? Like, how did Canada, a really nice place, end up doing something like this? The Daily Beast said Canada has now lost its innocence. I say, what innocence are you talking about? This is the same country that participated in the genocide of First Nations people. This is the same country that brutally suppressed tons of Quebecois, people who took advantage of Chinese migrant workers to build the railroads. This is the same country that participated in the imperialist invasion of Korea. What innocence are you speaking of? Canada was never an innocent country. We've been able to craft ourselves a very nice, pretty image. We do peacekeeping, not policing like the Yanks do. But let's face it, when it's come right down to it, we can be just as bad. Well, we don't have the means or the money to be as bad as them. But we're an imperialist power, don't forget that. When the U.S. has gone to war, we've pretty much always supported them, if not physically go there and fighting it. Because, well, frankly, our resources are stretched to the limit, merely carrying out the occupation of Afghanistan. And as Stephen Harper said, had he been around at the time, he would have had Canada go to Iraq. And I believe him. I really believe he would have done that. But realistically, it couldn't have happened because we just don't have the resources. Well, we've got a few people there now, but nothing of any real heavy substance. We could not have, taken part in that. But we are not an innocent country. Well, we've done a lot of horrible things too. It's just that we get to fly underneath the radar of the bigger imperial powers like the UK and the United States. And we get this image of being, like the nicer younger brother who doesn't do mean things to people. But yeah, we do. In fact, Canada has a terrible human rights record when it comes to international mining. Our mining companies are some of the most horrid human beings in the entire world. And our mining companies, for their international work, are known to be the worst in the world when it comes to human rights. So I don't know what it is people are talking about now. How could this happen here? Like, you realize we've been at war in Afghanistan since this whole thing happened. More than a decade. We've been assisting the mass slaughter of that country for the benefits of capital. We're at war. And then something like here happens, which I assume if this is a radical Islamist attack, it would certainly be related to that, being that we're helping carry out the slaughter of frankly, an Islamic people. What part of that made us think that we were immune from having these kind of things done to us? I mean, it was going to happen sooner or later, as we have blindly followed the United States into all its horrible actions, into all of the inhumanities and all the pointless wars based on lies, as much as we've been able to. Did we really think that we were going to be able to go all this time without getting hit? Are we so comfortable with this image that we're the good guys who can never do anything wrong? That we're the good Western people? Now, when the West does something bad, it's the Americans. Or, it's the British sometimes. But we're the good guys. We don't do the bombing, we just do the cleanup. Well, this is false. Maybe we don't have the money to drop all the bombs, but we're just as bad when it comes to killing. And in no way, shape, or form should we ever consider ourselves free from this kind of thing happening to us. Because frankly, we've had this coming. After everything we've done to all the countries over, the century, over the decades, after all the pain and misery that we've caused, not just by voting on the side of Israel, but helping out doing a lot of these killings as well. This really is one of those cases where, we brought it on ourselves. We've interfered in the affairs of too many people for too long. That this is one of those things that's just going to happen. If you get involved in these fights, you're going to get hit. And that's the truth. It's not just some soldier being killed overseas in Afghanistan. These wars get taken to the civilian population, even if it's us. And we should expect that. We should expect that one day some terrorist is going to come after us. We're not immune from this. As long as we're part of that global imperialist structure, we're a target too. The chickens have come home to roost. And we've brought a lot of this on ourselves. And the worst part is that now this has happened, the ruling class is probably sitting there wringing their hands with all the blood they have on it, watching the Reichstag burn, seeing this as an opportunity to dig us into this even more. This will be their opportunity to get us further into wars that we don't want to be a part of. And I think that's a real threat. And that's something we have to be prepared for. So I definitely think that that's going to happen. We're going to start getting dragged into more wars that we don't want to be a part of, and wars we can't afford. We're not the United States. We're not the world's superpower that has the greatest theft of resources in the world. We're just Canada. We can't afford it like they can. But I think that's the real danger here. Because the Reichstag is burning. And I think the people in power, they definitely see this as an opportunity to carry out their interests.